Thank you for viewing this presentation. In it, I will examine the use of psychoanalytic theory created by Sigmund Freud as a critical theory in the English discipline. While some English scholars have argued that the theory has been modified extensively, all psychoanalytic theories are rooted in Freud's work. If psychoanalytic critical theory in English is so completely different from Freud's work, then English, the field of wordsmiths, will call it something else. I'm Mary Chipman, and I invite you to join me in taking a closer look at psychoanalytic theory as used in English. The slides will move automatically with voiceover to allow viewers to sit back, listen, and observe. Critical theories mix with literary criticism to provide a more societal and cultural view of literature. As you can see, psychoanalytic theory stands alone with Marxism, while feminist theory and theories of race are lumped together with related and not so related lenses, depending on your point of view. This suggests that psychoanalytic theory, like Marxism, is a cohesive, legitimate viewpoint, all on its own. Psychoanalytic theory has some strange and dated ideas. For example, the young man on the left is a complete mess, with his disheveled clothing and hair, notes everywhere, and a desk that's a disaster. Sigmund Freud, the creator of psychoanalysis, would say he is anally explosive, meaning that he's emotionally stuck in his toddler years when his potty training was likely to be quite messy. The suffragettes next to him, massive case of what Freud called penis envy. This resentment of not having a male sexual organ manifested itself in aggressive behavior in women and a need to compete with men. At least, that's what Freud said. Finally, we see the folds of a human brain with the cerebral cortex. Freud believed all sorts of things were hidden within the brain, including the unconscious, our demanding and impulsive id, dream symbols, and repressed memories. The only problem was that no one can find them. Do you know what part of the brain holds your unconscious? No, you don't. Yet science has made tremendous strides in studying the brain in the past 10 years. For example, it was recently discovered that a wireless implant in the brain, when electrically stimulated, can help some paralyzed patients walk again. Psychoanalysis had its heyday in the mid-1950s, then fell from favor. Analysts are few in number, and an aging population with few clients. Yet English, for some reason, is clinging to it when even its own field seems to be phasing it out. Maybe a closer look at psychoanalysis will tell us why. Freud, who is a trained neurologist, became interested in the illness of hysteria, which occurred primarily among women. In the later 1800s, he attended lectures and demonstrations put on by another neurologist, Jean-Martin Charcot, who became known as the Napoleon of the neuroses. During his well-attended lectures in France, Charcot brought out hysterics to show their symptoms and to hypnotize them. Freud was fascinated by these women and their bizarre symptoms, which seemed to strike without warning. We have hundreds of images of the hysterics because Charcot loved to photograph them. It's interesting that many have a sexual overtone. It's hard to know whether these are the women Charcot was drawn to or whether sexuality was used to gain his attention. Regardless, hysteria and the women who had it certainly gained Freud's attention. This is a replica of Freud's office. Note the therapist's chair at the head of the couch. This is where the analyst would sit, saying nothing, allowing the patient to speak in a stream of consciousness intended to reveal psychic material that was hidden from them. Dreams were of particular interest, as Freud believed they provided a direct line to the unconscious through their symbolic imagery. In letting his female patients talk, Freud heard story after story of childhood sexual abuse. It was so prevalent that he decided to publish his findings. Freud's seduction theory, published in 1896, was soundly rejected by the medical establishment and community at large. Hysteria was fairly common. The assumption could only be then that childhood sexual abuse was common. The people of Vienna did not want to hear this, and Freud became an outcast. Freud's career was resurrected, however, when in the early 1900s he said he'd been wrong. While it was true his patients spoke of sexual abuse, now he said that they'd been sharing sexual fantasies. His patients wanted to have sex with their fathers, Freud said. He put forward his theory of psychosexual development, which proposed that children were sexual beings from birth, and revealed his discovery of the Oedipus complex, in which a child falls in love with one parent and wants to kill the other one. Freud's career was launched, and he became a worldwide figure. In fact, he is considered the father of psychology. His talk therapy did help his patients, and it's widely used by therapists today. We may not agree with how he framed them, but he did recognize that childhood experiences could be traumatic and influence a person well into adulthood. He understood that people are passionate and that their deepest feelings may be a mixture of love and hate, causing us guilt feelings and confusion. And he identified defense mechanisms, those ways we protect ourselves from things we can't admit. Addicts are usually in denial before they get help. We may project onto another person things that we're worried about in ourselves, and we may sublimate our feelings by channeling them into work, art, and socializing, or anything else that we throw ourselves into, rather than addressing an uncomfortable feeling. Unfortunately, Freud's theories have serious problems that cannot be overlooked. Psychology has rejected his beliefs and practices because psychology is a science, and Freud's theories are impossible to test. Where can you find an id or subconscious? He also took a small group of very ill women in Vienna, and from his work with them, created a theory of human development that he applied to the entire population. That's just bad science, and most psychologists reject it. Freud also admitted he didn't understand women at all, and, well, we're half the population, so that's a problem, and the list goes on. Ironically, 100 years later, sexual abuse was again a hot topic. Many claimed we had entered an era of witch hunts in which everyone was suspect. Today, although it appears to be discussed more cautiously, sexual abuse is still out in the open. This could have been Freud's greatest contribution if only he had trusted his patients and himself and had been willing to go against the tide of public opinion. So, what do those of us in the field of English make of this? Should we continue to use a theory that psychology itself rejects to analyze literature? Should we embrace the ideas of a man who listened to his patients, then betrayed them by saying they were all fantasizing, every one of them? I suggest that we not. Psychology is too rich a discipline for English to select such weak premises for a critical theory. There are many psychological theories to choose from, and here are just a few that have stood up to testing and could be fascinating when applied to our beloved works of literature. I have to wonder, English, what are we doing? We're a field that celebrates humanity, with works that can make us soar or plummet to the very depths of our souls. We deserve better than a theory that may fit neatly into critical analysis, but does not have a right to be there. I'll leave you now with the words of Carl Sagan, who beautifully summed up the importance of what we do. I'm Mary Chipman, and I thank you for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.